do. So we'll get to near it. The progressives hate her, but now they're upset with Republicans for rejecting her. I actually want to begin with a story from a week or so ago, but there's a method to my madness here. This story, it is from a couple of weeks ago. I have a method to my madness for going back to an old story that I touched on very briefly then and want to come back to now. And many of you, maybe you haven't heard the story. Seth Brenzel. Seth Brenzel is a gay white father of a biracial child. You've got that. He's a gay white male father of a biracial child. He was denied a spot on the San Francisco Board of Education's Volunteer Parent Committee because he does not bring enough diversity to the group. The Parent Advisory Council, also known as the PAC, unanimously supported Brenzel joining their all-female committee and submitted his name to the school board. San Francisco Chronicle columnist Heather Knight reported that during a board meeting on Tuesday night, his approval was debated for more than 2 hours. This is from KGO Radio. Opposition to his approval focused on the fact that he is white and will not provide enough diversity on the council. The council has 5 empty seats. Brenzel, who's the executive director of a music program for children, is openly gay. He lives in San Francisco with his husband and their young daughter. If approved, Brenzel would have been the only man on the council. What I find interesting here is in this KGO radio report, they refer to him as the only father on the council. He would be the only man on the council. According to an online transcript, what prompted a representative of PAC, when prompted, a representative of the PAC said the PAC can have up to 15 regular members and 3 alternates. Currently, we have 10 regular members and no alternates. I'll give you a breakdown. Currently, the Parent Advisory Council has 2 African-American parents, 1 Asian-American parent, 3 Latinx parents. Wait, what? 3 Latinx parent. How is it singular? 1 Pacific Islander parent and 3 white parents. There are currently, all of those are women. So you've got 2 African-American women, 1 Asian-American woman, 3 Latina women, 1 Pacific Islander woman, and 3 white women. Now, a reporter in San Francisco at this radio station, no less, accused Fox News when this came out of covering the story to avoid having to cover Donald Trump's latest impeachment. Now, Commissioner Matt Alexander, a new board member and a former district principal, said, I'm probably going to get complaints now. I'm telling white parents not to be involved or something. I want to be clear, that's not what I'm saying. White parents also in the city tend to have a lot of privilege and power and access to the Board of Education in various ways. A Brenzel supporter noted he would have been the only man on the council and the only gay person on the council. And there's diversity beyond the color of our skin. Another said Brenzel is overly qualified, if anything, for this position. He's ready to serve. You should be grateful for his service. Ultimately, the board rejected Brenzel's nomination and instead asked council representatives to find more candidates for consideration. The same school board voted 6-1 in January to change 44 school names as historic figures have ties to racism, like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. This is San Francisco. Now, there's a method to my madness here. It's an older story here. Yesterday, I spent time on Oakland, California school board, which is right across San Francisco Bay, right across from San Francisco. In Oakland, they're teaching ethnomathematics now. That capitalism and individuality are signs of patriarchy and racism. That you should not want to teach your kid capitalism. In other words, you don't want to teach your kid how to become rich. You don't want to teach your kid an individual work ethic. That they need to be focused on the collective. They're essentially indoctrinating kids. Now, let me tie one more story into this. So a listener sent this to me yesterday from the American Thinker. Conservatives need to start taking no prisoners and claiming scalps. One reason conservatives never saw a culture war they couldn't lose is that they insist on using Queensberry rules, even as the left fights no holds barred. Consider, for example, two scenarios. When leftists discover someone committing conservatism, such as when former Mozilla CEO Brandon Ike was found to have donated $1,000 to California's Proposition 8, they accept nothing less than the person's termination. In fact, they never want him to work again. Ergo, cancel culture. When leftists affect something truly outrageous, such as anti-white deep equity school curriculum being implemented nationwide, the reaction is different. Conservatives may fight back against it as they did with deep equity in Chandler, Arizona, but they're generally satisfied if the social engineering is abandoned. They don't go for blood. In fact, so often I've heard prominent conservative figures say in such situations, look, I don't want anyone fired. Well, I do. I say this not with just a vindictive spirit. Liberals make sure to administer a coup de grace, generally driven by anger and hatred, emotions epitomizing them. Yet slightly more thoughtful leftists may have an additional reason and understand something. Culture wars are zero-sum games, and winning a battle, but leaving your adversary in place to fight another day is no recipe for victory. With respect to school indoctrination, consider if you caught a teacher trying to molest your child, would you be satisfied with an apology and continue leaving your child in his care? Why should it be any different when a teacher visits upon his child the rape of mind, heart, and soul? The point apparently missed is that in such a situation, the problem is not that the educator tried to affect a given type of toxic indoctrination, is that he's the kind of person who would affect toxic indoctrination. This won't change just because you successfully mitigate an obvious symptom of his moral disease. He's still infected. He still is what he is. And while I'm no fan of Maya Angelou, some of her words should be heeded here. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I remember first hearing these words in my early 20s. I heard them, she continued. I just didn't follow them. Hence, I brought myself a whole lot of painful lessons and needless suffering because I always wanted to give people a second chance, a third, a fourth. Implementing a planned program of leftist insanity isn't just a momentary lapse in judgment, such as an angry outburst regretted soon afterwards, that results in calling a child a derogatory name. It bespeaks of a twisted worldview, of a lack of virtue. And when you identify a cancerous tumor, you excise it. You don't leave it in place so it can metastasize further. A teacher imbued with leftism will corrupt everything he touches, whether he wants to or not, for he cannot help being what he is. As with virtues, vices are caught more than they're taught. It's what's assumed that's learned best. And an educator's basic assumptions will always come through to his students one way or another. That said, a left-wing teacher will usually seek to indoctrinate. If my prescription sounds too harsh, know there's a difference between being virtuous and being a nice guy. The nice guys finish last. Basically, be a jackass to the other side. Be a jerk to the other side, I guess I should say. They're nasty to you, be nasty to them. Forget love your neighbor. That's all that Jesus stuff. We can't have that in America now. We got to fight as nasty as the other side. Now, I would note, by the way, it's worth noting that when I read this piece, there's actually not there's a lot of outrage and a lot of calls to be nasty, but no how. How do you do to the left what the left does to you? One thing conservatives, I think, have to keep in mind, which is never even addressed here, is that conservatives, we're not culturally dominant right now. You know, for example, conservatives were screaming about the Trump administration's Centers for Disease Control. This is the Donald Trump Centers for Disease Control issuing guidelines for COVID vaccines that required giving them to minority communities before you gave them to white people. Give the vaccine to the young black person or the young Latino person sooner than you give it to the elderly white person, because they have dealt with systemic racism and the elderly white person hasn't. Never mind that the elderly white person is more likely to die of it than the young Latino person. You got to give it to him first to address systemic racism in the country. Now, that was a bureaucrat at the CDC who's still there who did that. And conservatives put up a massive fight about this. And it was only when people on the left pointed out, wait a second, this really is anti-science. Only then was something done. Why? Because progressives have dominant street cred in this country and cultural institutions over conservatives. It's easier for a progressive to cancel someone than a progressive. So I would submit to you, I tie all these stories together because I think conservatives can't fight like the left. I don't think we have the cultural institutions to be able to fight against the left. I don't think we can affect cancel culture because cancel culture is not about the American people choosing to cancel something. It's about institutions choosing to cancel something. And a Fortune 500 company governed by progressives like Disney is more likely to cancel a Gina Carano, who made a comparison to conservative treatment now to Jews being treated by the Nazis, where they will leave in place a progressive director who advocates throwing Trump supporters in wood chippers. It's a double standard. And you've got to acknowledge the double standard. It's great to use hyperbole of, well, you would force someone who molested your child to go to jail, not just fire them. We've got to engage in our own cancel culture of the leftist teacher who would indoctrinate your child. Are you going to follow them all across the country? Because eventually they'll make it to San Francisco, and we should be fine with them being in San Francisco, ruining those kids. My point is this. There are a lot of conservatives right now who want to engage the left on the left's terms. The left is nasty to us. We should be nasty to them. No more love your neighbor. No more Jesus talk. No more being nice to people. We can't be nice to progressives because being nice is a weakness. You know, a keyboard warrior can say that. You can bang away on your keyboard and say stuff like that, but occasionally you got to get out behind your keyboard and go outside and actually see your neighbor who may be on the left. Let's just be nasty to that guy. Let's burn his house down. I mean, he'd burn our house down, wouldn't he? I mean, because they want to silence. No, you can't really do that. So why do I start with the San Francisco story? Because here's the thing. I don't think that conservatives have the cultural clout in society these days to engage in systematic cancel culture of the left because so many of the institutions are on the left. You got Amazon. My buddy Brian Anderson from the Heritage Foundation, now over the Ethics and Public Policy Center, got his book taken off Amazon because it discusses a biblical approach to transgenderism. Who among you is going to bully Jeff Bezos into putting the book back? You're not. And are you going to stop buying books from Amazon? Amazon sells 80% of the books in the country. Are you going to boycott Amazon? Good luck to you. Good luck with that. There is a solution, though. And it comes back to this story. In San Francisco, the Parent Advisory Council, made up of a bunch of women of different skin colors, wanted to put a white man with a biracial child. The man happens to be gay on the board. And the school board that decided George Washington and Abraham Lincoln are offensive and can't be part of society, they decided that this guy can't be on the Parent Advisory Council. Culturally, institutionally, a lot of institutions were like, San Francisco, let them do it. Here's my thinking. I actually think the bulk of the American people are with us. They may not say it. Look at 2016. You know, I really didn't think Donald Trump would win, and he did. Now, he lost the popular vote, but then California and New York overwhelmed. And if you took out California's vote, the president would have won overwhelmingly. The left has marginalized themselves along coasts in progressive enclaves. And they've got progressive enclaves even here in Georgia. And they push things in education. And parents should be vocal about this stuff. I'm not saying don't be vocal about it. What I am saying is mock it. Laugh at it. Whatever happened to the happy warrior on the right? You don't need to go destroy someone's life. You don't need to be woko haram. The bulk of the American people, I think, they're not politically engaged like you and me. They're not as politically savvy as you and me. What they see, though, are a bunch of brain biblical donkeys on one side and people on the right who are giving into the temptation to just be like the other side. And all these people in the middle are looking for is like, yeah, those people are crazy, but I don't want to be with you because you're just as nasty as them. So provide laughing at them. See, one of the things the left has done, and this is their defensive posture right now, is every time you laugh at their idiocy, I can't believe they would laugh at this. How dare they? No. Laugh harder at them. Mock and ridicule their policies. Mock and ridicule the fact that in California, your kids aren't going to learn 2 plus 2 because the school board is afraid they might become capitalists. Capitalism is a good thing. Individualism is a good thing. Laugh at them. There's such a temptation now on the right to try to engage in reciprocal cancel culture. And I got news for you. You can't do it. You don't have the cultural clout to do it. But you do have the people on your side. So laugh and ridicule the other side. Mock them. Explain the ridiculousness of their policies. Explain the ridiculousness of their lack of logic. Explain their lack of science. And make it humorous. Instead of scowling and screaming and pounding your fist and being angry all the time, there's a large portion of people in this country who are neither really of the left or of the right, but they want to side with the people who they like, and they don't like what's happening on the left. But when you're comparing teachers to child molesters because they're teaching your kids something you don't like, and you're screaming and saying we must eliminate them and they're evil and evil can't be tolerated, they're going to look at you and say, that dude's crazy. And they may just sit home. And guess what? If all those people sit home, believe it or not, there are more people on the left than on the right in this country right now. And if we're going to convert people back to our side, we can't do it with a fist and a scowl on our face. We do it with an open hand and a smile. And I would prefer we start doing that and build back the conservative movement.
Honest news and conservative views.
Never separated from the truth.
Hello there, it is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Y'all, these have kind of stopped being cute to a degree. A father-to-be from New York State has died after a device he was building for his child's gender reveal party exploded. Christopher Peckney, 28, was assembling the device in the town of Liberty when it exploded just before noon on Sunday. Police said the blast killed Mr. Peckney and injured his brother, Michael Peckney, who was taken to the hospital. Gender reveal parties are celebrations announcing whether expecting parents are going to have a girl or a boy. Police have not specified what device caused Sunday's explosion. New York State Police Department and its bomb disposal unit are investigating. The spokesman for the state police said the device consisted of some kind of pipe without giving further details. Speaking to the newspaper, Mr. Peckney's older brother, Peter Peckney Jr., described what happened as the freakiest of freak accidents that I could ever imagine. He did not know what set off the explosion. The death is the latest in a string of catastrophes to be linked to gender reveal parties. You see, you had a forest fire started in California, the California wildfires, Arizona wildfires. A man from Michigan killed earlier this month when he was struck by shrapnel from a cannon-type device fired during a baby shower. Can we just like have pink or blue balloons, please? Open the box and let them float away. This is getting to be a bit much. I mean, the gender reveal party thing is a millennial thing, I think. Younger millennials and older Gen Z are down with let's show the world extravagantly whether we're gonna have a boy or a girl. And I mean, isn't it like anti-trans to do? That's one of the things people on the left say is it's anti-trans to do. Why are you defining the child's sex or gender or whatever the heck they use? You know, I'm not opposed to people like announcing, hey, we're having a girl or we're having a boy. We did the same thing. But
30.
Really? You're gonna I listen, I don't mean to mock a man's death. I don't intend to do that. I'm sorry the guy died, but we're getting a little worked up over gender reveal parties, folks. Just go back to using balloons and release some balloons to tell the world, and then they get sucked into a jet engine, and God help the people on the plane. It ends badly. Just send a card. Hello there, it is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Let's go to the phones to Mike in Macon. Welcome.
Yeah, hey Eric, how you doing? I'm outside enjoying some sun instead of rain for a change.
Good for you.
Mike, yeah. So I was watching Fox this weekend, and I saw they had a young black couple on, and they had developed an app during COVID that you could go on to, and it would show you or tell you of all the black-owned restaurants that you could go to. And I thought, my God, this is upside down world. If I called you and said, hey, I'd like to come on your show or do some advertising, I've developed an app that shows all white-owned restaurants that you could go to. It would be 10 minutes before I was labeled a racist, and they came after me and you for promoting me. But they actually had these people on there talking about how wonderful it was and how great it was, and I thought to myself, Dr. King's got to be rolling in his grave, thinking, wait a second. The whole point of me was that you didn't judge people on the color of their skin, and we're going down the road that the first thing you do is judge someone based on the color of their skin or the tribe that they identify with. And since the media is so tied into, the liberal agenda, forget it. So my curiosity is, you can comment on it, but please, if there's any black conservatives or black liberals listening, call in and explain that to me, because I don't get that.
Yeah, listen, it's not only that.
There,
you can also download an app that when you're going to the grocery store, get this one now. You can take this app to the grocery store and you can scan the UPC labels of products and find out which corporation makes that product and whether or not they have the audacity to give to conservatives, so you can boycott it if you're a good liberal. That app exists as well.
Unbelievable.
Yep, exactly. It does.
And so what is it? What's next? Is it, okay, this is a liberal-owned restaurant or this is a Republican-owned restaurant?
They've already got that. In some parts of the country, you've got Black Lives Matter activists encouraging restaurants to put BLM signs in their window or else. Yes, this is the media doesn't like to cover it. They treat it as urban legend. What you've got is
Paul Potts. It's Paul Potts, it's Khmer Rouge, and you can explain that. You give them the history lesson, because if you went to a government school, you don't know what it is.
Listen, it's part of a cultural revolution that's going on in the country. You're right. Mike, let me leave you there. I appreciate it. It is part of what we're seeing is a slow-rolling cultural revolution in this country, where you've got to patronize certain businesses and not others, often based on the skin color of the person. You have to buy certain products and not others based on who they give their political giving to. There are certain views that were acceptable yesterday that are today no longer acceptable. It changes every day. It is a left-wing hostility. And one of the issues here is you've got to be willing to just stand up and say, nope, I'm not going to go along with it. And it's people, honestly, it's people like me who are in the position to do that, because many of you can't. And I recognize many of you cannot do that. And to some degree, there's got to be a level of pushback. I think you can't, you're not going to, for example, I know of someone who was required by a major corporation to attend a diversity program. And in attending the diversity program, they were required to participate in certain events. Sign up to volunteer for either a gay pride event or things like that. And this person refused and was called into human resources to want to know why he wasn't willing to be an ally. And he, of course, made a big issue about his faith, which freaked out the human resources department because they're not allowed to fire on faith grounds. And so they had to let him be. Not everybody is in a position to be able to do that. That's one reason I think I got an obligation to call out the nonsense so other people can laugh at it. What's part of what's going on here is also a religiosity on the left. There are sacraments. Abortion is a sacrament on the left. You killing your kid, or if you can't have a kid, to fund the killing of kids, it's totally a sacrament to Moloch. And it's one of the things the left does. Identifying the sacred and holy people and groups with which to support, totally on the left. Just as you, a Christian, want to patronize the business that has a little ictus on the door, they want to patronize the BLM supporting business. What it does, frankly, particularly with the pressure movement, is it divides up the country. Martin Luther King said we're going to judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And now a lot of people on the left are saying, no, he was wrong. Martin Luther King Jr. was wrong, according to these people on the left. According to the left now, you've got to judge people by the color of their skin. We're supposed to be a colorblind society. Listen, and a lot of this, for someone like me, here's let me talk about this personally real quick. Had an actual funny incident yesterday dealing with someone who argued I was not a conservative, in large part because I was not happy with the people storming the U.S. Capitol or certain things President Trump has done. And I find this increasingly now among a certain set, and it's typically a generational thing, older people, not younger people. And it is people who have essentially been broken by partisanship. Now, here's where I'm in this awkward position. I don't think I can fight the way that the left. Sorry, if you see me on my camera, I cut my nose shaving this morning, and every time I talk it, I know I put it's one of those 5-blade razors. I don't like 5-blade razors. Anyway, you didn't need to know that. I increasingly find it difficult to navigate the post-Christian conservative landscape because there are a lot of people on the right who ostensibly claim to believe in God, but they want to behave operationally like those who don't. They're a Christian on Sunday for an hour, 2 if they go to Sunday school, and that's that. It's ironic. The Obama administration was rejected 9-0 by the U.S. Supreme Court when they argued that the First Amendment, freedom to exercise your religion, actually means a freedom to worship. And the Supreme Court said, no, actually, it means a freedom of to exercise your religion, not just for an hour on Sunday. The Obama administration is the one that actually argued that the First Amendment is really a freedom of worship. And here you got a bunch of conservatives now who operate like that we got to go worship on Sunday, but otherwise let's behave like the left. We're going to fight the way the left was. They fight in a unholy, unrighteous, ungodly way. We are too. It's savage. Fighting is savage. War is hell. Except, no, you're never going to win. If you're a person of faith, you're never going to beat the world on the world's terms. You got the God of all creation on your side. I've never understood this existential crisis on the right that, oh my goodness, we got to be just like them. We got to be as nasty as they are. They win all the time because they're as nasty. Meanwhile, on the left, I know people on the left. Like every time I go to Los Angeles for HBO and Bill Maher, he goes on this rant about people on the right are always winning because they're so much nastier than us. I'm like, man, you should hang out with my conservative friends and try to tell them that because they're convinced you guys are winning all the time because you're so nasty. We need to be nastier like you. And he's, oh, no, y'all are just delusional. Y'all are the ones who are winning all the time. Both sides think the other side is winning all the time. Both sides think the other side is nasty, and we got to be just as nasty to win. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, what is there any room left in the conservative movement for love your neighbor? Because I've looked, y'all. I've been to seminary. I have learned the Greek. I have delved into it. I've got my Bible translated. I have tried to find the footnote, the caveat, the proviso, the carve out, the exception to the rule. I've tried to find it in Aramaic, in Hebrew, in Greek, in English. I've looked at multiple translations of the Bible, and I cannot find the parenthetical that says, except for these neighbors. It says love your neighbor. The Bible says there's neither Jew nor Greek. There's neither male nor female. I don't think, and there are some people who now embrace the idea of we have to be race conscious in our churches. No, I don't think you can because that's antithetical to the Bible. I think you're giving into worldly thinking when you say we need to be mindful of race in our church. No, I don't think you should. The Bible says there's neither Jew nor Greek. I think we as a body of Christ Our churches, yes, our churches are too segregated. But the way to break down that segregation is to love your neighbor, not to say, oh, we need an affirmative action program in our church. We need to be judging people by the color of their skin. I don't think it works that way. And then when it comes to fighting the left, you see what the left does. Essentially, there are those on the right who are becoming increasingly prominent, where I am now considered by some to not be a conservative because I don't want to fight in this way. I actually believe character still counts and the like. And there's some, oh no, we've got to be as nasty as the left. We got to fight. We got to be in their face. We got to be rude to them. They're rude to us. We're going to be rude to them. I can't. I can't do that because I actually do take the whole Bible thing seriously. And I take the whole love your neighbor thing seriously. And I think conservatives in this country have been most successful when they've been the most missional. When they haven't had a fist in the air, they've had an outstretched hand to help other people. And I think we'll be more successful long term if we go back to that. Look, I get you want to own the left. You want to beat the left. You like the President Trump because he was always willing to throw a punch. And there are too many people on the right who always want to bow down. And there are a lot of people on the right, frankly, who they've given lip service to the values of the right without actually believing it. I know a lot of pro-lifers who have told me, one in particular who has led one of the most prominent pro-life groups in the country, that she would far prefer to have gone to a Democrat, a Nancy Pelosi, a Dianne Feinstein, or somebody super pro-abortion, because they tended to be able to find common ground on other issues because they so vehemently disagreed on abortion. They might be able to find common ground. When you should go to a Republican who is all pro-life, I love Jesus and I love babies, and just wanted to give her a head pat and not actually do anything. Just wanted her to show up on election day and vote for him. There are a lot of conservatives who feel betrayed by Republicans, and they should. We're at $23, $24, $25 trillion in national debt. We're bankrupting the country on a bipartisan basis. You got a lot of Republicans who refuse to stand up to China in the same way that Biden looks like he's going to cave to China. I get it. But I also think that when you engage in cancel culture yourself, and when you behave in the same way the left does, which is largely these days secular, largely these days without any bearing in faith, when you're so willing to give up love your neighbor to win a political fight, you lose your soul in the process. Now, I'm Calvinist, once saved, always saved, but maybe you weren't saved to begin with. When politics, I say a lot that politics has become religion on the left, but it's become religion for a lot of people on the right as well. They go through the performative stunt of they show up at church on Sunday to be seen. There are a lot of politicians who only show up in churches when it's election time. I myself and my family, we haven't darkened the door of a church in a year because of the virus. I'm ready to go back. I feel like I'm letting my kids down. But I'm not willing to cost someone their soul or put myself in jeopardy with the Lord, to behave like a losing ideology. Because ultimately, the United States isn't permanent. I don't want to upset you with this, but the world's going to end. And I still think eternity matters way more. And if that means someone's going to look at me and say, well, you're not really a fighter, you're not really on my side, you're not really a conservative. Well, I'm sorry, your definition of conservative isn't principles-based, it's performance-based, performative-based. I kind of have ideas and ideals that matter, but bottom line is, the thing that matters most for me is one day I'm going to have to stand in judgment before God Almighty, and that scares me because I know my heart. And so I would rather try to love my neighbor and persuade them lovingly that my ideas are better than the other guy's ideas, that my side is better than their side, but it really doesn't help me when so many people on my side are engaged in performative biblical donkeyness to outperform the other side in being boorish, brash, and nasty. I think a smile goes a long way towards persuading people to come to your side.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick.
Hello there, it's Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. To Alpharetta, Georgia we go. Cornell, you're next. Welcome.
Hello, brother. I loved how you ended that last segment. Let me just say that real quick. That was spot on. I was calling in because one of your previous callers had mentioned, hey, if you know any black conservatives or liberals, can you have them call into the show and give an opinion about that app as far as finding black businesses?
By the way, I just love that my guests can call in, my callers can call in and say, hey, you people call the show too. Let's take over Erickson's show.
Gotta love it. But yeah. So and a friend of mine, he's a white guy. Of course, I'm black. I am. To speak to the other caller, I'm an independent because, frankly, both parties disgust me. So this is as close as I can get. But the thing on the app, a friend of mine and I used to have these social experiments where I would try to advertise the business and he would advertise the business. And sometimes, and it is a real thing where he got what I like to call the why not approach, and I got the why should I approach. And it wasn't all the time, but in some areas we're impacted as a minority on how we can advertise, where we can advertise, the opportunity to advertise. And I live in Alpharetta, and sometimes I do wonder, again, I'm blind to a certain degree on this, but at the same time, I do understand that some minority businesses struggle for advertising. And so those apps sometimes help identify, hey, I have a business here, I have a business there. And that's my thought on it. And if you would allow me one question.
I will allow you a question.
I have for you. On the cancel culture thing, the thing that I struggle with, and I get your overall point, and I really agree with it, but I don't think we are ever going to get past it if we're not honest with ourselves. And I struggle to have a substantive conversation with people when it comes to what people propose that the NFL should do to Colin Kaepernick versus the push when, the liberal side says, hey, I don't like what X said and I want you to boycott him. I just don't see the difference now, I'm not agreeing with either. I just don't see the difference between the two.
Yeah,
I don't see
listen,
how we get past it
I think one thing that the right's got to be forthright with is that there is a cancel culture on the right as well. And both sides engage in a cancel culture, and we got to be honest about it. I've had people on the right try to cancel me in 2016 because they didn't like I wasn't supporting the president. I had people show up at my house to threaten me, literally on my front porch, because of it. So, yeah, I definitely think we got to be honest with it. And there's something else we got to be honest with. I don't think what happened to Gina Carano should have happened with Disney. There are a lot of conservatives, I think, who get punished for saying run-of-the-mill conservative things, and the left gins up opposition to it. At the same time, if we're real honest about it, sometimes there are people who claim to be canceled and really know you really were a jerk. And I'm not going to fall on a sword or make a martyr or march in your name when really you were a jerk. And there are some people now on the right, I think, unfortunately, have taken this idea that anyone that the left targets on our side, regardless of how terrible that person is, we got to defend them. And there's just some things I'm not going to defend, like Alex Jones. I'm not going to defend a guy who really did convince people that Sandy Hook and the Parkland shooting were false flags. Why do I have to defend that guy? If anything, people on the right should be the angriest about him because we know that he's going to be used by the left to discredit all of us. There's got to be some level of recognition on both sides that there are some people who do things that aren't worth defending. And unfortunately, now we're in this. You don't like that Facebook? They came for Alex Jones. Well, in my experience, a lot of times you can say controversial things and not be canceled if you're just nice. It's amazing how we forgot that people view niceness now as a weakness in politics. Actually, nice guys actually do get pretty far. They can get away with a whole lot more than people who are reliably, sustainably, all the time nasty people. And I think we've kind of forgotten that. We kind of look on the last 4 years of Donald Trump and say, look how much he did. He was able to do that because he fought back all the time. He was never a nice guy, and we got far. Except you lost the House, and you lost the Senate, and you lost the White House. That's not getting very far, is it? Maybe I missed something along the way. Lost in translation, I suppose. All right. We got to move on. Near attending. Yes, we got to talk. But I want to talk about Justice League, too. Okay. Believe it or not, I want to talk about Justice League. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across the state of Georgia. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. There is breaking news at this moment. Senator David Perdue announcing he will not seek to challenge Raphael Warnock. This is breaking news right now. It is not going to be David Perdue from what I am being told. Let's see here. Yep, here we go. It just hit the wires. Former U.S. Senator David Perdue will not launch a comeback bid next year, clearing the way for other Republicans to enter the crowded field. Perdue has announced his decision days after filing campaign paperwork. He says, quote, "This is a personal decision, not a political one. I am confident whoever wins the Republican primary next year will defeat the Democratic candidate in the general election for this seat, and I will do everything I can to make that happen." Other Republicans are now clear to move. Perdue was narrowly defeated by Ossoff. Ossoff barely beat him. Now, interestingly enough, there's a rumor. I am aware of the rumor. I want to tell you this. It's just a rumor. I don't know if it's true. But I've heard a rumor. You know, ironically, it's kind of hilarious. A friend of mine who's a Democrat here in the state texted me the other day and said, what if this is what's really happening? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Well, maybe he was onto something, because it is now the rumor. Could it be? Could it be? Is it possible that the Republicans are going to try to consolidate the field for a particular candidate? Is it possible that the former senators, both of them, and the current governor and others are going to try to align behind a single person and avoid a nasty primary as best they can? I've heard rumors. And I've heard a name. Do you want to know the name? Rumor has it. Rumor has it. The downside is he's an Auburn grad. Maybe that's a good thing for some of you. Looking at his bio, he would be impressive. He would be impressive. I wonder. Possibly. Oh, I'm toying with you. It is a name I have heard mentioned repeatedly. In fact, I'm told it's who Governor Kemp really wanted until the person took a pass, and he then had to go through the whole application process and found Kelly Loeffler. I'm told it's the person that a lot of Republicans behind the scenes really pushed him on. It wasn't Doug Collins. And I don't know. This is just a rumor. And again, before I tell you this, it's just a rumor. It is a rumor, but it is a rumor that has picked up steam in the corridors of power. Made more so by the idea that he is leaving his current position. I'm talking about the Chief Justice of the Georgia Supreme Court, Harold Melton. He was sworn in as Chief Justice September of 2018. He was put on the Supreme Court in July of 2005. Prior to being on the court, Harold Melton was the executive counsel to Sonny Perdue, representing the governor on legal issues covering the entire scope of state government. Chief Justice Melton helped safeguard Georgia's interest in water rights with Alabama and Florida. He actively participated in administration efforts to advance the delivery of criminal justice services in the state. Before serving as executive counsel, Chief Justice Melton spent 11 years in the Georgia Department of Law under 2 attorneys general, where he dealt with a wide range of issues from the creation of the Georgia Lottery to the administration of Georgia's tobacco settlement. Prior to leaving to join the governor's office, he served as section leader of a consumer interest division. He received a Bachelor of Science from Auburn and his Juris Doctorate from UGA. He's a volunteer leader for Young Life Ministries. He's on a Young Life board. He's on the national board. He's on the board. He's a board member of Atlanta Youth Academies. He's a native of Washington, D.C. He grew up in East Point and Marietta and resides in Atlanta with his wife and their 3 children. Harold Melton is the name I have heard whispered from multiple people. I don't know if it is true, but there is this. Chief Justice, this is from WALB News. Chief Justice Harold Melton announced Friday he will leave the Supreme Court of Georgia effective July 1st, 2021. In a statement to court staff and the Georgia Judicial Council, he said he does not yet know what he will do next. July 31st will mark my 30th year of work in state government, 16 years on this court. This fall, all 3 of our children will be attending college at the same time. Now is the best time for me to explore opportunities for the next season of my life that will allow me to best serve our legal community and my extended family. I do not know what my next move will be. With this announcement, I can begin the search process in earnest. Melton is leaving a year and 2 months before his 4-year term as Chief Justice comes to an end. He was appointed on July 1st, 2005 by former Governor Sonny Perdue. He became Chief Justice on August 31st, 2018. Brian Kemp will appoint a new justice. It has not been easy to decide the best time to leave a job with a mission I believe in and the people I love working with, Melton said to court staff. We've done great work together for the benefit of the citizens of the great state, and this court is well positioned to continue the high calling that has clearly been set before us. I have such a peace and confidence that justice will continue to be served. That again is from WALB News and Chief Justice Melton. I think he's the, 4th African-American justice on the Georgia Supreme Court, 3rd or 4th. He has such a conservative record. At one point, he was considered by the Trump administration for appointments to higher courts. He's the name people are rumbling about. Would be interesting, wouldn't it? I mean, some people are just dogmatically convinced that because Raphael Warnock is black, you've got to have a black candidate on the Republican side. Well, here's a black candidate on the Republican side who he was appointed by Sonny Perdue, thought super highly of by Republicans. Governor Kemp had reportedly wanted him to be Johnny Isaacsen's replacement, but he didn't want to leave the court at the time. And now you got Raphael Warnock in there? Possibly. Maybe. I don't know. It's just a rumor. But it is a rumor, and it comes circulating on the same time that a lot of people were saying, maybe David Perdue's not really into this. Maybe he's signaling this as a placeholder for someone else. And then Perdue releases a statement today saying he's not going to run. And now you got a lot of people out there rumbling, maybe it is Harold. You know, he would be good. He would be good. Now, Kelly Loeffler is also out there doing a organization. She's trying to organize, essentially trying to do what Stacey Abrams has done with Fair Fight Georgia. Stacey Abrams, of course, is unimpressed. They had her on television to attack Loeffler for doing this, but she knows. See, here's the problem. This is a fundamental problem for Democrats. Had Republicans not talked themselves out of the January race, David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler would have won. David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler did not win because they talked themselves, the Republicans convinced themselves either the race was going to be lost or some people just couldn't get over them just running the message they ran on and they didn't want to go support them. They didn't like them. But it was all Republicans. 700,000 people did not turn out from the general to the runoff. More than 400,000 of those were Republican. If 300,000 Democrats, let's say 100% of those people turn out, and you've got about 400,000 were Republican, let's say 300,000 were Democrat, John Ossoff won by 50,000 votes. David Perdue would have won. Kelly Loeffler and Warnock would have been closer, but Loeffler probably would have won. So Loeffler has decided, given this, she's going to use her money and she's going to do what Stacey Abrams did. Now, listen, you need to understand this. What Stacey Abrams has done, it's not rocket science. You know, so Sasha Eisenberg is a name you've heard me mention before. Sasha Eisenberg essentially became known within the political community because he wrote a series of articles and then a book on how the Barack Obama team masterfully used micro-targeting data from the internet, specifically Facebook, to win. And he overstated the case, but then that was his angle, was data manipulation on the internet and how you use this to get elected. And he was really one of the first people to write about this. And so, oh, genius. But, I mean, there were people behind the scenes doing it. They just weren't writing books about it. What Stacey Abrams has done to organize the state of Georgia, it's not rocket science. The Republicans used to do this in Georgia. It's ironic that David Schaefer, the chairman of the Republican Party, who has overseen the destruction of the Georgia GOP, was the guy who helped build the Georgia GOP in the late 90s and early 2000s before he went into the legislature. Republicans used to organize down to the precinct. And they knew everybody who was in the precinct, everybody who was moving into the precinct, all the people who weren't registered to vote, and whether or not those people might just be interested in voting Republican. And they compiled a massive database. And then they got lazy. They won and they got lazy and they stopped doing it. They stopped organizing. They stopped going down to the micro level to do this sort of stuff. And all Stacey Abrams did is what the Republicans were doing, but she just catered it towards Democrats. Let's find the people interested in our issues. So she's come out, Stacey Abrams has, attacking Kelly Loeffler for doing this organization. Oh, she's QAnon. Marjorie Taylor Greene supported her. Can't trust her. She's just going to use this group to perpetuate conspiracy theory. Oh, that's a load of crap, and she knows it. What she also knows is there are more of us than there are of them. And so she's got to talk it down and try to discredit it. But what she says doesn't matter. If Loeffler spends her money on competent people doing this sort of grassroots, in the weeds, precinct by precinct analysis, finding Republican voters, finding what motivates them to turn out, making connections and inroads to them, building a grassroots network in the state, she's going to be a dominant political force in the state, more so than Stacey Abrams. Now, Abrams doesn't have to worry because the media will never treat a Kelly Loeffler the way they treat a Stacey Abrams. The media will never do it. But it doesn't matter. The results are what matters. And Loeffler knows it and Abrams knows it, which is why Abrams is spit mad about it. Because she knows there are more of us than there are of her side. And she knows the Republicans dropped the ball. See, what you guys, some of you, can't admit is the election wasn't stolen in Georgia. Republicans screwed up. And the reason so loudly the Republican Party in Georgia has embraced the idea the election was stolen is to avoid you holding David Schaefer and the Republican Party accountable for their screw-ups. Loeffler knows the race wasn't stolen. She knows there was a screw-up. And she's going to be the one to fix it. And that makes her a powerful force. It wouldn't surprise me if you see some Republicans connected to the state party come out and attack her. Would not surprise me at all. Because if she's successful, it largely exposes just how unsuccessful and how bad and incompetent the Republican Party was. So you may very well find this weird point where Stacey Abrams and the Republicans are both attacking Loeffler for doing what? Finding conservative voters and learning how to turn them out to vote. It's needed in the state. Nobody's doing it right now. She might as well do it. And she could be the gift that keeps on giving to the Republican Party. Every Republican in the state every conservative in the state should be championing what Loeffler's doing. The fact that some aren't happy with it suggests there's something else going on here with them, not her. And if the Republicans are able to get a guy like Harold Melton out to run, they've got a compelling, super smart, very well-liked Republican candidate who's got a conservative record on the bench, opposed to Raphael Warnock and his radical progressivism, but who can make a case for his values, not against Raphael Warnock. The Republicans in Georgia behind the scenes may be waking up to the new reality and maybe coming to fight. That'll be a good thing.
He doesn't just have a radio show. Eric.
I was working on something. All right, I got this. I found the website. Kelly Loeffler's group that she's forming is called Greater Georgia. And if you're interested at all in signing up for it, if you're interested at all in being involved, if you text the word data to 33777, We will. I will send you back the link to her group. It is called again Greater Georgia. She was on Fox and Friends to announce the rollout this morning of this group. And let's see if I can pivot here, my sound machine here. Let's see if I can get some of this.
Leffler joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ainsley.
Good morning. So you're not giving up. What made you go back out there and fight again?
Well, Ainsley, I am bringing my experience not only as a candidate and a senator, but as a businesswoman, someone who has worked and lived the American dream. And Greater Georgia is premised on the idea that our state is greater when everyone's voice is heard and everyone's vote is counted. And so we're building Greater Georgia around 3 key tenets. And the first one is identifying and registering more voters here in Georgia. We know that there's about 2 million unregistered voters, the majority of whom believe in our conservative values, things like school choice, better jobs, low taxes, small government. We need to do better outreaching to those folks and bringing them in. And that leads to the second element of this, which is really broadening our engagement across more communities here in Georgia, reaching out to the Black community, the Hispanic community, suburban women, and letting them know how important their voices are in our movement, and listening and sharing those conservative values and making sure that their voice counts and is heard. In our race in January, we saw that 500,000 voters did not turn out that voted in November. And the majority of those were Republicans. So we need to do better at keeping that tent up year-round, not taking the tent down after an election. We have to let people know where we stand on the issues and that we need their voice. And then the third part is all about strengthening trust in our elections. We know that in Georgia, 55% of Georgians believe that we need more safeguards in our elections. So helping Georgians trust in our elections and making sure that they turn out.
I know.
Good for her. Look, I think this is needed, and she's right. You know, one thing you hear, for example, let's take New Mexico and Arizona. A lot of Hispanic voters in the South Texas, along the Mexican border, and in New Mexico and in Arizona, they went Republican. They went pretty significantly to the right, which was astonishing. There were a couple of counties that have never gone Republican that flipped just based on Latino Hispanic voters in those areas. And one of the things that they said overwhelmingly is that Democrats only show up when there's an election, and the Republicans have come in and they've stayed. You know, there's a lesson here for Republicans, and you're hearing her echo this, is you can't just show up in a black neighborhood before an election and say, hey, vote for the Republicans. Stay there. Learn from them. Learn their issues. Same with the Hispanic neighborhoods. Show up. Show up and be seen regularly. Engage regularly, not just in election time, and they'll start taking you more seriously than they do when you only come in asking for votes. Yeah. And that she gets that is a very good sign. Hello there, it's Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I must be delicate here, but I must have a conversation with you about something. So I have a son who wants to play soccer. You know, it's kind of funny. My wife wanted a boy. She grew up with her nephews, played on the football team, wanted to play on the football team, or wanted him to play on the football team. And then she had a boy. And she's like, yeah, I don't know that I want him on the football team. Well, he wanted to play. He played baseball for a while, but he really wanted to play soccer. So we've got him in soccer. And he had a match last night. He's JV middle school team. And I just, I don't know. Part of this is I was not an athlete growing up. I played baseball. Grew up in Dubai. We really didn't have a lot of options. But I played baseball. But one of the things I always like, going back to when I was a kid, I disliked greatly the parents who sit on the sidelines and yell at their kids. Even more so because we're in the South and the kids are playing soccer. And it's amazing to me how people sit on the sidelines or in the bleachers and they don't know what the hell they're talking about with soccer. And yet they're trying to yell stuff at their kid. Attack, 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 attack. You got to attack the ball. Come on, people. Don't yell. It's got to be embarrassing. I mean, I'm embarrassed for the kid when the parent is yelling their name, yelling out onto the field what they should be doing. She's like, what do you expect? Do you want the kid to listen to you or to the coach? I was talking last night to a friend of mine after this over who is a coach. He's a high school coach and says it is the worst thing because you are an employee of the school, particularly in private school setting. You're an employee of the private school. The parents pay the tuition that keeps you employed, and the parents want to be just awful on the sidelines. And to some degree, you've got to rely on the refs to deal with it, and the refs are too busy focused on the game, and you don't want to have to deal with it. But you got kids whose parents are trying to coach them from the sidelines when you are the coach. I find the whole thing. I find it embarrassing for the kids. And there was one poor kid out there, and the parents by name just the entire time. You knew exactly which kid it was because the parents were yelling the whole time. And it wasn't very encouraging stuff either. I felt bad for the kid. What possesses parents to relive their youth through their kids on the field, particularly when none of these people played soccer, I'm pretty sure. Most of them didn't, at least. There was one guy who I suspect he did, and he wasn't from this country. And you could kind of tell he knew what he was talking about when he was yelling at his kid. Just like, come on, really? Kick the ball, kick the ball, kick the ball. I waited for someone to say, get into the end zone, get into the end zone. When they make a goal, that was a home run. You know, I used to watch sports with my grandmother who absolutely had absolutely no idea what was going on. And I forget it had to be a Saints game when I was a kid. And somebody made an interception and ran back for a touchdown. And my grandmother was so excited about that home run. I'll never forget that. Just home run. Like, no, it's a touchdown. But it was like that. Come on, people, please. Don't yell at your kids. Don't. You're embarrassing your kids. If nothing else, you're embarrassing me vicariously being embarrassed for your kids. When you're yelling at your kids and you just let the coach be the coach. Maybe we would all be better. And, I want to cheer for my kid, too. He had some good plays, and I wanted to cheer for him. But also, I just didn't want to be that parent. I don't know. I find it distasteful for the kids. Now, moving on. I had to get that off my chest. I want to talk about something not political because I get tired of politics and I like Batman. So I kid you not. So I wrote a book several years ago, had a very real near-death experience, and was in the hospital for a very long time. Long story short, I'd been doing a lot of travel in 2016 for the presidential race. In late 2015, early 2016, going to a lot of debates and stuff, and I threw a bunch of blood clots into my lungs, like a lot. Rumor has it I still have a couple. I've been on blood thinners for several years now. Xarelto, thankfully, not the bad stuff. And I wrote a book for my kids. And the very first chapter of the book is called Waiting for Batman. Regaling my children of the tale. When The Dark Knight came out on video, we were in the hospital. My wife was giving birth to our second child. And, well, The Dark Knight came out that day on iTunes. And I tied up the hospital Wi-Fi to download The Dark Knight. Fell asleep in the delivery room waiting. Snored till my wife yelled at me to wake up. I was that guy. I like Batman, though. And I was waiting for Batman that day and waiting for my kid. I like Batman. I like Batman more than Superman. Superman's kind of a boring character when you think about it. He's kind of the invulnerable character. It's like Captain Marvel. You notice in the Avengers movies, they had to find an excuse to keep the Captain Marvel character away, because otherwise, I mean, the Captain Marvel character just could have won. I mean, out of hand, could have won. So they had to find an excuse to keep the Captain Marvel character out of the field, and then just randomly show up. Need somebody to rescue Tony Stark. Plot point. Let's have Captain Marvel show up and find him floating through the universe, and on and on. And Superman's kind of the same way. Yeah, I always thought that if you wanted to have an intriguing Superman story, it needed to almost be a detective story, because you got to find some way to get around the strength and pit the brain against Superman as opposed to raw strength, because you can't. But anyway, Zack Snyder helmed the DC universe. Christopher Nolan came out with the three Batman movies that are just considered some of the best superhero movies ever made. The Dark Knight, widely hailed as the best superhero movie ever made. And then Zack Snyder took over. Now, Zack Snyder, he's known for a certain type of film that it got a very dark color scheme. The 300 is one of his movies. He's made a number of movies. I'm not overwhelmingly a fan. But I kind of liked the fact that, if anything, there was a realism in the Dark Knight, or not in the Dark Knight, in the Zack Snyder superhero movies that isn't necessarily there in the Marvel Avenger movies. So if you pay attention, for example, in the very first Avengers movie, the Battle of New York City, where are all the people? I dare you, go watch the Avengers. And then ask yourself, they're in the middle of New York City in broad daylight. Where are all the people? They're not there. And the destruction rendered by an alien invasion really isn't necessarily the big destruction that you would think. When you get Zack Snyder and the Man of Steel, Superman kills someone, and Superman's not supposed to kill anyone. But of course Superman's going to kill the bad guy. When the bad guy's as strong as him and can't be contained, of course he's going to be the one who's got to kill the bad guy. And the destruction is destruction beyond anything that you would see in a Marvel movie. It's frankly more realistic. And then you've got Batman versus Superman, and it wasn't a good movie. It just wasn't a good movie. Well, so Zack Snyder films the Justice League, and it is apparently going to be super dark. It's going to be like depressingly dark, violent movie. When you're dealing with superheroes and alien invasion, guess what? In real world, it's going to be that way. And DC made a conscious decision that they were going to go real world-ish, as opposed to Marvel, keeping the kind of bright, cartoonish color schemes and campiness and humor that not Zack Snyder. He was going to go dark and humorless. Well, he had a falling out with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers wanted him to do things he wasn't comfortable with. They were increasingly unhappy with the darkness of his films, not very optimistic vision, driving them towards an R-rated series. And then his daughter died tragically. And Schneider couldn't really function, and so the studio used that as an excuse to push him off the film. And they brought in Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon was of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He had been on a couple of Marvel movies, and it didn't go well. But hey, he's got Buffy. He's got a couple Marvel movies. They decided, let's bring this guy in. And he reshot and re-edited the Justice League into what you saw on the screen. And if you saw it, it was a bad movie. It was a stupid movie. It was a movie. In fact, let me give you an idea of one of the scenes at the beginning. Is a guy in a MAGA shirt. It says MAGA. Attacking a Muslim woman in her grocery store. White dude wearing MAGA shirt attacking Muslim woman in her grocery store. That is the sort of thing Joss Whedon, broken by Donald Trump, introduced into this movie, along with a poor Russian family who for some reason wasn't smart enough to leave their town when the aliens invaded, though everyone else in the town left. It was a really dumb movie. And for years, people have been saying, please, please, let us see the Zack Snyder cut. Let's see what Zack Snyder wanted. It was inarguable, hands down, Warner Brothers treated him terribly. They took advantage of his daughter dying to push him off the project, and he still had terabytes of film footage. So now we know that there's been this internet movement now for 4 years to show 3 years to show the Snyder cut. We want to see the Snyder cut. And so Warner Brothers decided to let Zack Snyder put it all together, but then not spend a penny to actually put in the special effects. So essentially you would have seen Ben Affleck as Batman dressed up in his costume in front of a green screen, and you'd have to use your imagination as to what he was actually doing. And Zack Snyder said, nope, I would rather you guys pay the price than give you this footage so that you can not put in the money that you need to make it right, and then say, well, see, we made the right call because you people wouldn't want to watch this anyway. Zack Snyder was right. He, by the way, notoriously in Hollywood, notoriously a nice guy. Zack Snyder, regardless of his, and I'm not a big fan of his, I really didn't like Batman versus Superman, but he actually is a nice guy by all accounts. Everyone, even the people who can't stand working with him, says he's the nicest guy in Hollywood. But he flat out refused to go along with what Warner Brothers wanted, and they were forced to hand him $70 million to perfect his vision, and they're releasing it on HBO Max. I think March 15th. Now, some of you obviously care not one whit about this, but I'm actually very interested in seeing this. Apparently, one of the rumors is that in the end of Batman versus Superman, Superman dies. And Bruce Wayne, who is Batman, and you need to understand this. If you're not into comic books, let me just explain to you. Let me make sure Charlie's not texting me to tell me cut it out. This is boring. Nope, not yet. I can keep talking about it. You need to understand this. So to understand Batman, you got to understand Bruce Wayne is the costume. Bruce Wayne isn't the who Batman is. Bruce Wayne is the costume Batman puts on to fit into ordinary society. So there's the subplot apparently that made the DC comic people really, really angry. And that is, and I don't know that they'll even let him leave it in this, is that after Clark Kent, Superman, dies, Bruce Wayne falls for Lois Lane and they strike up a relationship. She still loves Clark Kent, but he's dead. So might as well date the billionaire. And apparently that's used when of course, Superman never dies. He's resurrected by the bad guys, allegedly, and that's part of the plot of the movie. Now, I have no idea whether it turns out that way or not. There was certainly something baked into that in Batman versus Superman. There's this vision of the Flash shows up from the future telling Batman that she's the key or some such. Lois Lane is the key. But I'm intrigued by it. I am. And the fact that a major movie studio could do so bad with its superhero films. So Wonder Woman was actually a good movie. Wonder Woman 1984 was absolutely terrible. Batman versus Superman, terrible. Man of Steel was okay. It wasn't great, but it wasn't great. The Christopher Nolan Batman series, hands down the best superhero series ever, and then he was burnt out with it. He wanted to do a 3-story arc that had a beginning, middle, and end. It worked. The Dark Knight was just the height of superhero filmmaking. And now they're going to trot out the Zack Snyder Justice League thing. And here's the thing. I don't think it's going to be that good because I don't think he did a good job with Batman versus Superman. I don't think it's going to be that good, but it's got to be better than the crap I saw in the theater. That was horrible. I mean, the Justice League, Josh Whedon revised Justice League. And by the way, Zack Snyder's name was left on the movie and he never saw it. His wife and Christopher Nolan went and saw a private screening of it and agreed they could never let Zack Snyder see it. So he's never seen what Josh Whedon did, but he's gotten hateful fan mail from people angry at him for things Josh Whedon did. He's like, this isn't my movie. What is this? Well, now they're going to let him do it. I am going to watch it, and I will probably watch it twice. I'm actually really interested to see it. I'm intrigued by the idea of treating superheroes as if it was real. The destruction, the violence, all of that, the darkness of it, it would have to be real. The alien invasion, of course, if the aliens invade, a lot of people are going to die. But also, I'm just not sure that Zack Snyder's up for it. But he's more up for it than Josh Whedon. I'm totally intrigued by this. I don't care if you people aren't. I'm going to watch this and I'll report back.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick Erickson.
I don't even know what the recipe is coming out tomorrow, but there's one of them. There's one coming. We'll see. So we need to have a discussion, people. Joe Biden has a nominee kind of flying under the radar. It is his nominee for Deputy Labor Secretary, Julie Sue. I want to read for you part of a story from 2018 in Deadline Hollywood. One of the key California laws designed to protect child actors from sexual predators has gone largely ignored and unenforced since it was enacted 5 years ago. The law requires publicists, managers, acting coaches, and headshot photographers who work with child actors to be fingerprinted and pass an FBI background check to screen out registered sex offenders. Only then will they be issued a child performer services permit. A Deadline investigation, however, found that not a single Hollywood publicist who represents child actors has obtained a permit. Dozens of managers, acting coaches, and photographers who work with child stars have also failed to comply with the law, which is punishable by a year in county jail and a $10,000 fine. Yet no one has been charged with breaking it. The law was enacted to keep men like Robert Villard from entering, or in his case, re-entering the industry after being convicted of a sex crime. Villard, in fact, was the poster pedophile the law specifically targeted. For many years, he was a publicist, manager, acting coach, and photographer of child actors, some of whom would go on to become major movie stars. But he also had a long history of sex crimes against children. In 1987, he was convicted of possessing child pornography, but the conviction was overturned. He was arrested again in 2001 after a police raid of his home turned up thousands of photos of scantily clad boys in sexually suggestive positions. He pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor, which was sentenced to 3 years probation. Villard, who sometimes operated under the assumed name of Bob Moniker, continued to work with child stars until he was busted again in 2005 and pled no contest to committing a lewd act on a 13-year-old boy to whom he was giving acting lessons. He served 7 years in prison and got out just before Governor Brown signed AB 1660 into law. BizParents co-founder Ann Henry, the lead sponsor of the law, said the law was designed to protect children from convicted pedophiles like Villard. And yet there was no enforcement of the law. Now, one of the people who would need to enforce the law was a California Labor Commissioner. And the California Labor Commissioner is now being picked by Joe Biden to be Deputy Labor Commissioner. Open Secrets, which is a website that exposes this sort of stuff, notes that while Julie Sue was California Labor Commissioner, she never enforced this law. Julie Sue is a potential Biden appointee. Biden wants her, according to the San Francisco Chronicle, for an administration job, Deputy Labor Secretary, and, well, she's got to go through Senate confirmation, and maybe people need to ask her about her time not enforcing a key law in California to combat pedophilia and child traffickers. Hello and welcome. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number, if you want to be on this year program, is 877-97-ERIC. 877-973-7425. You know, so this funny thing happened after the election, that we were getting a ton of phone calls in the weeks running up to the election and for several weeks after the election. Not the antagonistic stop the steal phone calls, just people wanting to talk and ask questions. And we use a service for our 800 number here. And I kept getting emails from them. Your call volume has gone up. Are these legitimate calls? Are you being spammed? Can we do something? Do you need to up the monthly amount that you're paying for your call service? And on and on and on. I was like, no, look, it's fine. We're a radio show and it's the election. And they're like, oh, okay. And a few weeks later, I'd get another email from them. Well, things have settled back down and the call volume has gone back down, as I knew it would. We've had some people who have said, well, you know, you should try to spark phone calls to the program. We actually do research on this here program. And the thing that comes up repeatedly is that the listeners want to listen. The number of people who call the program, you should see the phones on a daily basis. They light up. And it's people calling the call screener to relay information to me. And they just want to hear me talk. They don't want to actually call in for the most part. I'm totally happy to take even people who disagree. I'm totally happy to take your phone calls. But I just, you know, I'm proud of myself to a degree that I'm doing a radio show people just want to listen to as opposed to call, whether to yell at me or chime in. I like that. It's my show. It's not a caller driven show. And if you want to be a part of a show, well, go get your own microphone and try to get a show off the ground. Now, all right. I'll move on from that. You can call me, though, if you want, 877-973-7425. You know, you can also go to ewerickson.com. We've got our show website up. You can listen to the live stream there. The number of people, there are a couple of stations. I need to send them the data to show them how many people are listening from their area to my show and encourage them to put it on their morning show. I got a particular place that will go nameless where if they knew how many people were listening to my show, they would probably take the show. Nonetheless, I digress. I got stuff I want to talk about. You've probably heard, if you've had the TV or radio on at all, even on music channels. I was listening to a music channel last night, and even there was no escape from the news. 500,000 Americans dead of COVID-19. I want to talk about this, and I'm probably going to make everybody mad. Number one, a lot of people who said it was going to be no big deal when early forecasts projected 200, 300, 400, 500,000 deaths. Oh, it's overinflated. It's not going to do that. It's going to be just like the flu. It's going to be 10, 20,000 deaths. Then they moved the goalpost to, oh, well, it's not really COVID deaths. It's other people dying of stuff, and they're misattributing it to COVID for money. Hospitals get money, so they've jacked up all the deaths. And now they've moved the goalpost again to, well, it was comorbidities, really. It was COVID, but they died because they had cancer or lung conditions, or they were fat or had diabetes or something. That's really what the problem was. And some of them have moved the goalpost even further to, well, they said it was going to be 500,000. Look, I guess they were right. Nothing we could have done about it, obviously. Never trust the people who keep moving the goalpost. And there are a lot of people on the right these days who keep moving the goalpost, and it frustrates me. I want some ideological consistency, not just moving the goalpost on the left. That's what the left does. They always move the goalpost, and it frustrates me with them too. There's something else here. The media highlights the 500,000. It is a notable milestone, but a lot of it is tinged in partisanship and blame for Donald Trump. I do think had the president grasped earlier and moved more dramatically against the virus, he'd probably still be president. Because when you look at the people who left him in the exit polling, the people who jumped ship to Joe Biden, a lot of them were senior citizens and white dudes who were on the unemployment line, and they blamed the president for his handling of the virus. They would have voted for him but for the virus, and he lost by really 43,000 votes in the Electoral College. But overwhelmingly and by and large, I think most Americans, they're not assigning political blame to the virus. It's why Andrew Cuomo, for example, is not as blamed. There's a lot of partisanship there in that he's got a D after his name and the media will protect him. Democrats will protect him. He is their Trump. But to some degree, it also is people aren't blaming politicians. So Floridians are not blaming Ron DeSantis. New Yorkers, they're only starting to blame Andrew Cuomo only because of the cover-up of the nursing home deaths. Georgians are not blaming Brian Kemp. Californians are not blaming Gavin Newsom. If anything, in California, they're blaming Gavin Newsom for not opening up the state. People aren't blaming politicians for deaths caused by a virus, despite the media trying their best to get people to blame politicians for deaths by virus. So long as you don't blame Joe Biden, of course. But then there's something else on this, and a little more pernicious. And by the way, they're still attacking Ron DeSantis on this stuff. Listen to CBS News. This is just kind of ghoulish awfulness, trying to make political points out of Ron DeSantis.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is facing a torrent of criticism for steering thousands of vaccine doses to communities developed by his political supporters. The action comes weeks after DeSantis tapped supermarket chain Publix to be the sole distributor of vaccines in a handful of Florida counties following a $100,000 donation the company made to DeSantis' re-election PAC. Jim Axelrod has this story.
In Manatee County, Florida this week, thousands of people got the call they'd been waiting for. Come to the affluent Lakewood Ranch development and get a COVID vaccine.
We were very fortunate. We got the call. We came right down.
It was more than good fortune. They all lived in 2 specific zip codes, and their doses came through a deal struck by Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis and the CEO of Lakewood Ranch's parent company, owned by major Republican donors.
It just was inappropriate.
Commissioner Misty Servia says the deal bypassed county protocol, allowing a select group of residents to go to the front of the vaccine line.
So rather than this randomized pool where everybody gets a fair shake, these 2 zip codes were going to receive preferential treatment.
This was done strictly by the governor.
At a county meeting, Servia, also a Republican, voiced her concern.
You have to understand, though, the optics are horrible.
The zip codes are 2 of the wealthiest and whitest in the county, and in the bottom half of COVID rates countywide.
Well, it's just wrong. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Patrick Carnegie runs MCR Health, the region's largest primary care provider.
We want to make sure that the process is done fair and is done, equitably across the board.
Governor DeSantis said he was trying to get the vaccine to a high concentration of seniors, but in a county full of seniors, he never explained why the doses were limited to just this group. He did threaten to take the shots elsewhere.
I mean, if Manatee County doesn't like us doing this, then we are totally fine with putting this in counties that want it.
Notice the shakedown here. So Ron DeSantis sets up vaccine distribution for senior citizens, and they don't like the way he did it. They're alleging things with no proof. They're trying to make it political. They've given more attention to this, by the way, than they gave to Andrew Cuomo covering up nursing home deaths. They're trying to make it political. They're trying to define Ron DeSantis now, and there's no coincidence that this is coming out as polls show Ron DeSantis increasingly looking like the Republican a lot of Republicans would gravitate towards if Donald Trump doesn't run again in 2024. They're trying to define him now as some sort of mass murderer or some partisan who's willing to steer vaccines to preferred groups. Oh, and by the way, they're giving shots at Publix. They're giving shots at public supermarkets. They're donors of Ron DeSantis, the family that owns Publix. And so it must be conspiracy. Never mind that Publix everywhere are giving out vaccines. And they're complaining about horrible optics. He's giving shots to senior citizens. And by the way, these 2 zip codes, turns out they have the highest proportion of senior citizens in that county in Florida. NBC News is attacking Ron DeSantis for politicizing it by giving the shots to senior citizens, the group most likely to die of the virus. Is it any wonder people tune out the media on this sort of stuff? But wait, there's more. What are you hearing from the Biden administration. Do you know when you get the shot, you still can't do anything with your life? You know, we've had this on the right. You've had people saying, go about your life, don't wear a mask, get the virus, it's no big deal, you're going to be fine. And we got 500,000 dead people. And you got people on the left saying, hey, you get the vaccine, wear a mask, and never leave your house again, never, ever, ever, ever. Is there not some sort of balance that we can do by chance? Is there not some sort of balance? Hey, get the vaccine, get the second dose, and then go live your life. God bless you. Listen, part of the rosy scenarios, remember, it was this time last year in New York City, they were saying, oh, it's going to be no big deal here. Y'all go out and go to Chinese New Year, have a blast. You had in March, Bill de Blasio telling people, go get drunk on St. Patrick's Day, support your local bars. Only a week before St. Patrick's Day was saying, my bad, we got to shut everything down and put them all out of work. The rosy scenarios. The rosy scenarios by the left and some on the right never panned out, but also the disastrous scenarios have never really panned out. And now you've got the government telling people, go get a vaccine, but you can never live your life again. Even after you get the vaccine, you can never live your life again. You're going to have to stay home. You're going to have to shelter in place forever. That's not really an incentive for anyone to go get the vaccine. Hey, go get this shot that we rushed and then go home and hide from the virus even after you've given the shot. Why are people going to get the vaccine? I thought we were getting the vaccine to go back to normal. And no one's really wanted to come forward and give us. Now, there are some reasons for this. There are some reasons, but those reasons are increasingly looking to be in dispute. Israel, now having vaccinated almost all the country, is going back to live their lives as if pre-pandemic. And they're going to see what happens. Maybe they'll have to shut down again. Maybe something will happen. But by and large, Israel is like, everybody here's got the shot. We're all going back to normal now. Why can't we go back to normal after we get the vaccine? This is not a good talking point for the federal government to be telling people, we want you to get jabbed with the needle twice. The second time, you're probably going to get really sick for 24 hours, and then you still got to stay home, wear your mask, wash your hands, social distance, keep your whole family spread out in the house, and don't go outside. I would submit to you, if they're really serious about wanting everyone to get the vaccine, you probably need to not paint the pessimistic, dire, we're all going to die anyway predictions, because that's essentially what they're doing. In Georgia right now, looking at the real 7-day moving average, where they use the 14-day window, that's kind of the gold standard, we're now down to where we were back in June and August and the beginning of November. The up, the down, and the up again. We've gone back down. We're doing better than we were in the worst of the summer, and we're doing better than we were in the worst of post-Thanksgiving, post-Christmas. We're doing really good. And the number of people getting vaccinated continues to go up. The number of people who are getting vaccinated goes up. The number of cases continues to decline. There are very few hotspots anymore. Gordon County, Walker County, Bartow County in Georgia, those are some of the hotspots still. And then the worst hit are Chattahoochee and Stewart County, where there aren't a lot of people, but a lot of people have it. The number of vaccines continues to skyrocket. The number of vaccinations given continues to skyrocket. They're doing vaccinations around the state. You can go to dph.georgia.gov. You can online reserve a spot at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, You Save It, Publix, Kroger, Ingles. You can go to the state vaccine locations as well. People are getting vaccinated. New supplies coming every day. The United States is now 5th in the world in terms of getting shots in people's arms. 5th in the world. Or no, 6th in the world. There are 5 countries ahead of us. The United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, the Seychelles, the UK, and Israel. Israel's actually number 1. Israel is number 1, the Seychelles number 2, UAE number 3, UK number 4, Bahrain number 5, US number 6 in terms of shots in people's arms. And yet the message from the government is we're all going to die still. Please stay home. Keep the schools shut down. Nothing's safe. You can't live your life. That's not a message that encourages anyone to go out and get a shot. If you get the shot and then say, well, you still have to stay home and be miserable. Perhaps it's time to move beyond the doom and gloom. 500,000 people are dead. Americans get it. They're clearly not blaming the government for those deaths by and large. But they're going to blame the government if the government keeps schools shut down and keeps people in their houses and keeps states locked down when it's time to reopen.
You're listening to the Erick Erickson Show.
Hello there. If you text the word data to 33777, text the word data to 33777, I will send you back a link to Kelly Loeffler's new group. You can sign up and be involved, volunteer, help, get involved, learn how to be a grassroots coordinator, things like that, as she tries to essentially match what Stacey Abrams has done. Stacey Abrams is spit mad about it. Attacking Kelly Loeffler for having the audacity of thinking that she might be able to do this. You know, it really is something that. So I got a bookshelf in my office. I'm got a camera here. I got a big light. I got my monitor. Behind the monitor is my bookshelf. I've got an entire row of campaign management books. I used to do campaign management. I ran congressional races, a couple of statewide races, some local races, state house, state senate races. I was actually pretty successful. I got a better win record than a loss record. I did mail, I did polling, I did phone banking, I did grassroots coordination. I did advertising. I did it all, and I loved it, but just not enough to want to do it full time. Because in election season, very hands on, and I like my family. I don't want to be that distracted, and clients are needy people. I like doing whatever. I'm in my dream job. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I would use all the money to just build a better radio product. I don't want to leave this job. In fact, if anything, I'd like to grow this. I'd like to grow. I'd like to move beyond where I am, move to the big league, so to speak, move to a national audience. And I'm trying to find a way to still talk about Georgia stuff, even though I get on a national stage. And when I filled in for Neil Bortz for years, Bortz had a national audience, but there are always Georgia stories that you can relate to people, like the Loeffler story or David Perdue not running again. If y'all haven't heard, David Perdue has announced this morning he's not going to run for the Senate. There are plenty of stories to relate to a national audience from a Georgia perspective. I don't want to go to New York or Washington or anything like that to have a national show, but I would love to have a national audience. And honestly, I've got this sense that there is there's this sense from some that in order to do a conservative show, you've got to just essentially make it an outlet for Trump. And I don't know that you do. I'm a conservative. I'm an evangelical. I would love to, frankly, get back to just 3 hours a day so I go back to seminary. I can't go to seminary when I've got a 3-hour show, a 4-hour break, and then a 2-hour show. There's not enough time. But along the way, just having an interesting show where you talk about other stuff and relate national stuff and Georgia stuff together, I think I can still do that. And then talk about stuff that a lot of other conservatives don't talk about on radio, like, for example, this story at the Gospel Coalition. This is from my friend Trevin Wax. We are just weeks away from the 1-year mark when COVID-19 disrupted the world and forced us all into a season of quarantine. 12 months later, with most schools and restaurants reopened, we've learned how to go on with life while seeking to mitigate the spread of the disease and protect frontline medical workers from being overwhelmed with cases. The majority of churches have reopened as well, but ministries geared towards adults, students, and children have lagged behind worship services. Even as vaccinations are on the rise and hospitalizations are falling, pastors are unsure about the future. Most churches in the United States met in person in January, but the percentage dropped 11% from September 2020, which indicates the early winter surge of COVID cases led to churches stepping back. Even though most churches are meeting again, the difference from a year ago is dramatic. Of the churches meeting in person, a third of pastors say they're averaging only 50% of attendance. Another third said their attendance is at least 70% of what it was. Within the number, only 8% of pastors say they're at 90% or above. And most outlet ministries are shut down still. The ministries to cater to students and adults and kids, gone. That's the problem here, is getting your kids back in church right now and culturally socializing them with other Christians is really a struggle right now. Well, there's some good news that's happening right now. There's a third study in a week showing the COVID vaccine substantially reduces COVID-19 infection, and that people who have the vaccine can be exposed and get the virus but are not contagious and themselves don't get symptoms. The CDC this morning now, while I was talking, or while in the middle of my last monologue saying it's ridiculous, they're telling you still got to go home, are now saying that if you've gotten both doses of the vaccine and it's been 4 weeks from your second dose, you can go live your life. Hallelujah. Finally. I'm ready to go back to life. I'm ready to go. Hang on. I got a note the other day from a guy who works out at Reynolds out at Lake Oconee. And I've been out there before. We've hung out together. He works out there and he listens to the show. And he said he is ready to see my whole family come out there and wants to buy me a beer. And I'm ready to go. I love Reynolds. Don't get out there enough. There's this nice Ritz-Carlton. For those of you in the rest of the state, it's the weirdest thing. Listen, I don't mean this pejoratively or anything. It's just kind of weird. There, you got Lake Oconee, and there's this big Ritz-Carlton out there in the middle of nowhere, and it's fantastic with these amazing golf courses. And you can get a cabin. The cabins are ridiculously expensive, though, and they're hard to get. But I went out there. Gosh, when I was writing my book, got my book advance in 2016, I went out there and got a cabin, and it was a 2-bedroom, and I was by myself. It was right on the water, and it was so relaxing. The only thing I didn't like, there wasn't a kitchen, but that was fine. Room service was great. They have good pizza at the Ritz-Carlton out there. And I've got friends who take their kids out there. I realize a lot of you are like, the Ritz-Carlton, are you crazy? Yes, it can be expensive. But Callaway, too. If you're looking for a place to go in Georgia that's reasonably priced and you want to take the family, Callaway is fantastic. I love Barnsley Gardens too, but Callaway, we used to take the kids when they were little all the time, and we finally just decided to buy a family membership to Callaway and start going back to Callaway because it's a neat place to go. You got cabins, you got trails, you take your bike. I can fly fish out there. So I'm actually taking off. When is it? Is it in 2 weeks? 2 Fridays from now. Let me look at my calendar here. No, it's next Friday. My friends, am going to not be here next Friday because a friend of mine has been insistent for a year that I learn how to fly fish. You know, Dick Cheney one time insisted I need to learn how to fly fish. And then it was a grand conspiracy because Tucker Carlson told me I need to learn how to fly fish. And now I got a buddy of mine who's an amazing outdoor photographer, does a lot of work for Cabela, goes all over the world taking outdoor pictures of fishermen and the like. And he is grabbing me and a buddy, and he's going to teach us how to fly fish. We're going up to Habersham County, and we're going to go fly fishing up there. No, not the river all of you people in Clarksville like. That's the one river he doesn't like. So there's a private place up there he likes that we're going to go to. It is kind of funny. So everybody up in Clarksville, when they found out I was interested in fly fishing, there's a great outdoor store up there in Habersham County in Clarksville. And a lot of people, you got to go to this river. You got to go to this river. Well, this guy goes all over the world to go fly fishing and loves North Georgia, loves the area around Helen and Clarksville and all that. But the one river up there that everybody says to go fly fish on is like the one river in Clarksville. He's like, yeah, no. I'm going where I'm told to go. Don't be mad at me. I'm going where they tell me to go because he's the expert and I'm not. But I may have to just come through and say hi if I can. But there's no guarantee that I'm going to be able to. I for the record. But I'm going fly fishing and I'm excited by it because look. Have y'all seen me? I am not exactly a paragon of outdoor exercise virtue. But I'm going to go, and we're going to have a lot of fun, and it's going to be cold, and I got an Airbnb up there somewhere, so that I can go. hang out the night before and just enjoy. I've never even been, so it's actually closer to Helen than it is to Clarksville where we're going. And I'm intending to go not drown in the water and actually maybe catch a fish. I don't know what I'll do if I catch a fish though. This is the problem. Cause I'm kind of, I'm OCD when it comes to this sort of stuff. And what am I going to do? I've actually got to touch a fish. It's Unicoi Outfitters is up in Clarksville, and I've got some flies. I did an event up there at Wood Mercantile, is it? Yeah, Woods Mercantile, and Unicoi Outfitters. They gave me some flies, and I'm going to use those suckers to go fly fishing. And it's apparently a thing and an expensive hobby, and I can do it at Callaway. My wife says, we need to take the kids to Callaway, and you can fly fish. So I will, and I will probably embarrass myself. But it's okay. I'm going to move on now, because I need to talk about Neera Tanden. I've put this off. I was going to start the show with Neera Tanden, and I didn't, because I came up with something better to talk about. Neera Tanden is the Office of Management and Budget nominee for Joe Biden. Now, Trump's OMB director, Russ Vought, is a friend of mine. He's gone off to start a think tank I'm very intrigued by. And Neera Tanden was the head of a think tank, the Center for American Progress. She is a far left, angry person. And for years, she has used the Center for American Progress to advocate for Hillary Clinton. She savaged Bernie Sanders. She's gone online and in very personal terms attacked Republicans and Democrats alike. And now they're blocking her nomination. Joe Manchin has said, nope, not going to have her. Bernie Sanders isn't a big fan of hers either. Well, guess what? If you oppose Neera Tanden, you're a sexist. We should not be surprised that the only attack Democrats really have these days is you're a sexist, you're a homophobe, you're a bigot. Essentially, you're a hater. You're a hater. It's never about the policies. It's you're a hater. Women's rights activists and allied Democrats are growing increasingly vocal about what they call the unfair targeting of women and people of color nominated by Joe Biden to top posts in his administration. Their fears had been bubbling for weeks as Biden's nominees of color came under sharp attack from conservative groups or saw their nominations delayed or opposed in greater numbers. But the worries burst out into the open over the weekend as Neera Tanden's nomination to lead the Office of Management and Budget neared defeat at the hands of a Democrat. There's a double standard going on, said Representative Judy Chu, Democrat of California, head of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. Her nomination is very significant for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. I do believe this is a double standard. It has to do with the fact she would be a pioneer for the position. No, it has to do with the fact she's a terrible person. You know, this is the crazy thing. So, okay, you have these people who have really bat poop crazy ideas. Like crazy ideas. And the Republicans and some of the Democrats are blocking these people and, it's sexism. Oh, it's racism. No, it's because they're wackadoo, nutty, with crazy ideas. And Neera Tanden is one of the worst in Washington. She's used her position as head of a think tank to savage Democrats and Republicans alike, doing Hillary Clinton's bidding. That's what it was. Neera Tanden supporters now say her social media presence is being used as a cover by her opponents, noting she's apologized, deleted, and taken ownership of her tweets. So what? She did it only because she's getting the nomination. It wasn't a sincere apology. And look, I'm in the camp that if you apologize, accept the apology. But she waited until she was nominated and said, better delete these and trot out the pro forma apology. And then listen to this. Listen to this. Justice Brett Kavanaugh got angry at his hearing. He went nuts in the hearing on senators. Dude was accused of rape. What do you think he was going to do? Oh, my gosh. I'm sorry. You people are putting up some wackadoo nominees who have wild and outlandish views, and notice what they don't want to do. They don't want to They don't want to defend their wackadoo views. They want to scream racism, sexism, bigotry. Really? Really? You've got some insanity out there. You've got really crazy views. Vanita Gupta, who is running as wants to be Associate Attorney General, has campaigned on defunding the police. And they're screaming sexism. Oh, y'all don't like her because she's a woman. Let's not talk about defunding the police, please. You got Kristen Clark, an Assistant Attorney General who would be in charge of the Civil Rights Division, who has some wackadoo views on, like really insane views on race, really crazy views on race. Oh no, y'all are just going after her because she's a woman. Let's not pay attention to her views on racial supremacy, which they're some crazy views. And here's the thing, you've got the Politico, where I'm reading a lot of this stuff. The Politico is essentially advancing the agenda for the Democrats. They're not trying to be fair. I mean, not that I expect Politico to be fair. It's just very funny how they are shaping these stories in large part, shaping them in a way that you can read the entire story and not really understand what exactly it is that said the Republicans. Oh, well, it must be sexism. No, it's the one person had crazy views. Let me see if I can Google this real quick. Kristen Clark, racial views. This woman had some weird issues. She hosted an anti-Semitic professor. She's got some crazy views on racial superiority. It's kind of odd stuff. Let's see where. Oh, and they've cleaned up her profile to make her less controversial on Wikipedia, of course. But she had some sort of view in like a Harvard, the Harvard Crimson or some such. She has some sort of view on this weird issue on racial superiority. Let's see. Okay, here's Quinn Hillier. Yes, Clark, president of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, has drawn fire from Jewish groups and from Fox News personality Tucker Carlson for things she did and said a quarter century ago while a student at Harvard University, including a letter in which she argued that, get this is it, extra melanin in the brains of black people give them superior physical and mental abilities to those of whites whose pineal glands are often calcified or non-functioning. Yes, she did that. She wrote that. Let's see. This is her letter. In response to those who defend the bell curve, please use the following theories and observations to assist you in your search for truth regarding the genetic differences between blacks and whites. 1. Dr. Richard King reveals that the core of the human brain is the locus coeruleus, which is a structure that is black because it contains large amounts of melanin, which is essential for its operation. 2. Black infants sit, stand, crawl, and walk sooner than whites. 3. Carol Barnes notes that human mental processes are controlled by melanin, that same chemical that gives blacks their superior physical and mental abilities. 4. Some scientists have revealed that while whites are unable to produce melanin because their pineal glands are often calcified or non-functioning, pineal calcification rates with Africans are 5 to 15%, Asians 15 to 25%, and Europeans 60 to 80%. This is the chemical basis for the cultural difference between blacks and whites. 5. Melanin endows blacks with greater mental, physical, and spiritual abilities, something which cannot be measured based on Eurocentric standards. We can readily admit that an abused child is less likely to achieve academically than a child that has grown up in a supportive atmosphere. Black children, whether rich or poor, grow up with an added abuse which white children never have to face. Imagine the message this misguided information like the bell curve would send to a black child who is trying to find her place in a school. It's degrading, belittling, and outrageously false. Attacks on black people, such as those in the bell curve, are not unique. Black children face this abuse daily through television shows, jokes aired on the radio, textbooks with truncated history, etc. Liberal whites underestimate the damage which racism causes on the minds of black children, and conservative whites know all too well how to enlarge that damage. No matter how rich or supportive a black person's home might be, by the time she's ready to take the SAT or apply to college, she has struggled far more extensively than any white person. In addition, it is completely naive to say that blacks have achieved economic equality with whites. It's just ridiculous. Black people are not asking for political correctness, but truthfulness, fairness, and an end to this abuse. Kristen Clark, class of 97. Melanin endows blacks with greater mental, physical, and spiritual abilities, something which cannot be measured based on Eurocentric standards. Carol Barnes notes that human mental processes are controlled by melanin, that same chemical which gives blacks their superior physical and mental abilities. This is the woman Joe Biden wants to be the head of the Civil Rights Division. Now, it was 25 years ago that she wrote that. Is it not relevant to ask her whether or not she stands by it? Is it not relevant to ask her if she still believes the anti-science view that melanin gives some greater mental, physical, and spiritual abilities to some people more than others? Is it sexism or racism if you ask her that? According to the left right now, it is. You're not allowed to ask this. Why? Because they don't want exposed just how crazy Biden's nominees are. But yes, they're nuts.
Well connected and well respected. It's
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Clarence Thomas has filed a compelling dissent in the Pennsylvania election case. So this is more complicated than a lot of people want to talk about, this Pennsylvania case, and I thought it was the one that was the most meritorious case in all of the election challenges. Essentially, what Pennsylvania did is the Secretary of State changed a bunch of deadlines that had been enacted by statute that were easily met, even with the pandemic. But on top of that, a lot of counties in the state treated people differently. And ironically, it was the Republican counties that put Republicans at a disadvantage. What happened was in some counties in Pennsylvania, like, for example, even here in Georgia, you got to sign your absentee ballot. And in Pennsylvania, in Democratic counties, they went through, they found the people who had failed to sign their absentee ballot. They called them and said, hey, we can't count your ballot. You got to come in and sign your ballot. They gave those people a right to fix their mistake. Republican counties read the law literally that if a ballot isn't signed, you got to reject the ballot. And they never called Republicans in Republican counties. They just threw out the ballots. And that actually cost Donald Trump some votes. Now, importantly, this is important and often overlooked. That was not enough to change the outcome of the election in Pennsylvania. But in 2020, the Pennsylvania Secretary of State changed deadlines set by the legislature. And the Supreme Court originally said that the people who filed the case did not have standing to pursue the case. And now essentially they've rejected it and said, too late, should have done it beforehand. They put people in a catch-22. Clarence Thomas has filed a dissent, and it's a pretty compelling dissent, I think, that all this does is muddy the water. It muddies the water, and the court needs to address the issue. The court needs to clarify who has standing to sue on these things, when can they sue, and can deadlines be changed when those deadlines are set by the legislature? Can they be changed by executives? The Supreme Court decided to take a pass. In large part, I honestly think that they're just ready to move on. And one of the things that is interesting here is it was Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch. Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett sided with the majority in the case and decided it was time to move on. So you had two Trump appointees in the majority, one Trump appointee in the minority. And I think Thomas, though, makes a very compelling case that we really genuinely, truly, at this point, have got to have some court resolution on when can executives or bureaucrats change deadlines set by the legislature. And if not, we're going to keep having these problems. This is the legitimate issue of 2020. Unfortunately, too many people got hung up on the idea of the Dominion voter system machine stealing the election when they didn't. Mike Lindell is now being sued for $1.3 billion. He's probably going to go bankrupt. He's going to lose the case. And it distracted from the core issue of bureaucrats changing deadlines set by legislatures. And that's still an issue that needs to be resolved. And it's one Clarence Thomas insisted the court needs to get involved in. And he's right. He's right. This is the issue Republicans need to fight on. And at least here in Georgia, while we control the legislature, we should bind our executives and bureaucrats and prevent them from being able to do things that the legislature hasn't allowed them to do. Hopefully we will. Now, tomorrow, we'll talk about something else because I'm tired of talking about all this stuff.